For this demonstration, we're going to have a quick look at how we can set up and manage databases within our Windows Azure environment. So you've got two options actually. There is a built-in management portal right within Windows Azure, or if you are much more familiar and more comfortable with something like SQL Server Management Studio, then you can use that as well. So for starters, what I've done is just gone ahead and created a new database in here, and there's been absolutely nothing done with respect to the configuration of this database. So your first choice is to manage it right from within Azure itself. All I have to do is select it. If I've got several here, select the desired database, and down below you see that we've got the manage option right there. So this pulls up a Silverlight based application wherein we can just supply our credentials. And we can log in right from within Windows Azure. And this gives you a reasonably functional environment to do administration. You can create new objects. You can configure the properties of the database. A reasonable amount of day-to-day activities can be done right from within here. You've got overview links here where you can create new queries and open particular scripts and things like that. Some quick start guides and database configurations. We've got administration options here, again, where we can create new options. And then we've got design where we can do tables, views, and store procedures. So a relative amount of configuration can be done directly from within here. But of course, most database administrators and developers are much more familiar and more comfortable with something like Management Studio. So we'll have a look at setting that up as well. So we'll just log off from here. And we just need to go back to our database configuration here. So one of the things you'll notice when you create a new database is that a server is assigned to it automatically and by default. Now, this is not one that is created as a virtual machine over here. These are ones that you create for yourself, so you don't see that one here. So under databases, we do get this server, and obviously that's just a randomly generated name. But what we do have to do is click on the server itself, and we have to make sure that we go to the configure option for this server. Couple of things we need to know here. Okay. For starters, these are the firewall settings as to what is allowed to access this particular database. Now, Azure does actually pick up on your current client IP address, and it grabs your public IP address, so it knows that that's the correct one. And then you can just hit add to the allowed IP. Now, which I've already done that, but that's just simply creating a rule called whatever. You can rename this if you want to, and then it just puts in the start address and the end address, which in this case are both the same for single client access. Now, if you're just doing testing purposes from multiple locations, then you can also do something like this. I wouldn't recommend this at all for an actual implementation, but for just testing purposes, maybe you're not certain of all the IP addresses. You can just do maybe an allow all rule. Okay, and as for the start IP, we can just go with effectively the very first IP and the very last IP for the entire range. Okay, so that will allow everything, and again, only for testing purposes, just in case you're not sure of which IP address you might be using. So once you enter a rule, you can just save that. Now, obviously, if you knew perhaps an entire subnet within your environment, then you could certainly enter that. But in any case, you need to have the IP address of whatever clients you're going to use entered in here so that they can be allowed. So that has to be created and that has to be saved. So now that you have the appropriate IP address configuration in there, the other thing you want to do is just go back to the dashboard. This is the management URL right there that you'll need to gain access from within SQL Server Management Studio. So we're going to copy this string here. We don't need the HTTP part. We're just going to highlight that and copy it. And that's pretty much all you need. From that point, we can just launch our SQL Server Management Studio. Once that comes up, what we're going to do is plug in that information, and then I've already entered that once, so that's still there from last time, but that's all you need. That's the exact same URL. I can just paste that in just to be sure. Okay. And then you do have to make sure that you choose SQL Server authentication. There is no Active Directory information within Windows Azure, so we can't use Windows authentication. So we have to use SQL Server, and then again, you just specify your username and your password, and we can connect. And there you have it. There's the database that has been connected to, and that little blue icon actually indicates that that's an Azure-based database, and there's our database. So now we've got our connection through Management Studio, and away we go.